Good morning. Javier Becerra, Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, joined by our Democratic leadership, including Congressman Steve Israel, who is our Chair of our Communications and Policy Committee. We just had another discussion in caucus about doing something, taking action, as a result of this weekend's mass killings, the atrocities that occurred in Orlando, Florida. To all those who are thinking about the victims and their families, we say, hashtag stand with Orlando, and in Spanish, hashtag estamos con Orlando. I just have to note that for the Latino community, this is hit especially hard because when you see the names, they're human beings, but I don't believe in the Latino community people would have expected that so many of the names would have had Spanish language surnames, and it brings home to so many of us that this could be your family as well. I think we have a pretty simple message coming out of our Democratic caucus. This Congress should not leave this week without giving us a vote on something very simple: no fly, no buy. If you can't fly because you're on a watch list by our government and you are not allowed on an airplane, you should not be allowed to enter a gun shop and walk out with an assault weapon. We're now beginning to hear some Republicans, including presumptive Republican nominee for President Donald Trump, say that there's something to no fly, no buy. The difficulty is this. This Congress is asleep at the wheel. It's been a do-nothing Congress, especially when it comes to the issue of gun safety. And there's no guarantee that anyone in Congress will have an opportunity to vote to prohibit someone who's on a no-fly list from being able to purchase a weapon. Between 2004 and 2014, 2,000 terrorist suspects legally purchased guns in the United States. And so it's time to stand with Orlando or San Bernardino or Charleston or Newtown, and the list could go on and on. It's time for us to stand and do something, not just hold moments of silence. It's time to stand with Orlando. Estamos con Orlando. I now yield to our leader, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your very thoughtful message, for your leadership in bringing us together now 2 days in the week since Orlando. Yes, we are Orlando. This is so tragic, so sad in so many ways. It does offer an opportunity for us, though, to do something immediately about it. And I would hope that we could reach out to our Republican colleagues and say the least we can do is the no-fly, no-buy legislation. We want more, of course. We want reasonable background checks and the rest, and we think we have the votes for that on the floor of the House if the Speaker would bring up the bill. But right now our focus is to say to the Republicans in Congress, if 80-some% of the American people, 70% of NRA owners, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, all support passing the no-fly, no-buy, no-fly, no-fly, no-buy bill. If you're not allowed to fly, you shouldn't be allowed to buy the gun. Let us prove to them, disprove what they suspect, that the Republican majority in the Congress of the United States is a wholly owned subsidiary of the National Rifle Association. And that is what is standing in the way of our being able to protect the American people. We call upon them to disprove that, at least in this instant. We also call about our friends in the LGBT community, our friends in the gun safety community, our friends in the African American community who suffer gun violence. So many people suffer gun violence every day of the week in their neighborhoods. We're soon, and Mr. Clyburn will address the 1-year anniversary of what happened in South Carolina. So if we can organize all of those folks, all expert in mobilization, all successful in changing the public mind and the public policy in relationship to issues of concern. I think we have to act immediately, and I think that we can be successful. But in the meantime, the very least the Republicans would do is to pass the no-fly, no-buy. And that I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished Democratic whip, Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you very much, Madam Leader. First, we need to empathize with the fear that the LGBT community is experiencing right now. Unfortunately, today we're going to adopt a rule which precludes the expression of Congress that we will not discriminate against those who are LGBT members. How sad. That is one thing we could do today. Say to all Americans, you will not discriminate, we will not discriminate, our government will not discriminate against citizens who are members of the LGBT community. And our chairman of the caucus is correct as well. Nor will we discriminate against somebody based upon the origin of their nationality or their surname. So those are two things we could do right now. Stand up, speak out for what America believes in, and that is equality for all. Secondly, a moment of silence is appropriate. But days and weeks and months of action to preclude the violence that is occurring and taking the lives of so many in America is absolutely essential. No fly, no buy is a start. It is an important start, and as the leader points out, it is a start that the American people have broad consensus on. So let us start there. Let us have an amendment on the floor that says no discrimination. Let us have action today or later next week, at the very latest, on no buy, no fly, no buy. And thirdly, although I would urge all of our members to vote for 3 bills that have already passed, Americans ought not to be deceived that that's action. We have already passed those bills. They are in the United States Senate, and the Republican leader ought to move those bills. So let us not pretend to take action. Let us take action. No discrimination. No fly, no buy. No simply moment of silence, but days of action. And I now yield to my dear friend, the Assistant Leader, Jim Clyburn of South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Whip, Madam Leader. I often quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic and I think timeless letter from the Birmingham City Jail when he wrote, "We are going to be made to repent, not just for the hateful words and deeds of bad people, but for the appalling silence of good people." Now, come Friday, the 17th, we will be celebrating or commemorating the first anniversary of what I call the Charleston 12. 9 people who died and 3 people who survived a targeted massacre. That church was targeted, that Bible study class was targeted, just as this nightclub was targeted. Both of these are domestic terrorist issues, yet what's coming to the floor is limited to foreign terrorism. That's not addressing what the problem is here today. And I think that on 2 counts, there are 3 bills that we've got before the floor, my bill deals with closing that loophole, because this young man was not eligible to be buying a gun. But somebody put in the wrong information. Either he intentionally misled the folks to give him time to be able to ride out the 3-day rule, or somebody keyed in the wrong information. And that loophole that says you can purchase a gun if the background check is not completed in 3 days should be closed. In the case of Orlando, someone said earlier, I was last arrested for my civil rights activities in 1961. Between March 1960 and March 1961, I was arrested several times. That record is still there. Yet we say a person that was on the no-fly list, once you close the case, they come off the no-fly list, and then they can go and purchase a gun. This gentleman, if he were treated, his record were treated the way mine was treated, would not have been able to get this gun. So why is it that my record from 1961 is still sitting in the FBI and still brought to my attention every now and then, and no one is bothered about his record? So I think that we need to get real about this, we need to be serious about this, and we need to break our silence on this issue. And with that, I am pleased to yield to Joe Crowley, our Vice Chair.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for all your efforts in terms of reminding us the tragedy of just 1 year ago. But quite frankly, it's about every week we've had a moment of silence over this last year. And we often also think about the times when there are individuals who are killed by gun violence that are not criminally related, where there's no moment of silence, where there's no recognition of their loss as well. It's at these major tragic events where we have moments of silence. We just came from a conference or a caucus meeting where the level of frustration within our caucus is rising. The Democratic caucus is frustrated because the Republican caucus continues to do nothing while there are mass slaughter going on weekly in the United States. Will the no-fly, no-buy bill be a panacea? No. Will it solve all the problems? No. But it is a start. And that's what the American people are looking for from Congress. They want the Republicans in the Congress, who are in the majority, to understand that they will not tolerate any longer nothing. And that's what they've been dealing with so far. That's what they've seen come out of the House of Representatives, nothing. We have had 12 votes on no-fly, no-buy in this Congress, and each time the Republican caucus has defeated it. If you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. If you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. And that's what my Republican caucus colleagues don't understand. They are part of the problem because they refuse to recognize any step that would diminish gun violence in America. And that needs to change. And our caucus may be frustrated, but we are also energized. We are energized and we are moving forward. We will not sit complacently while our Republican colleagues continue to frustrate this system, to not allow any bill of substance to pass when it comes to the issue of gun violence. We will not sit by silently and allow for that to go on any longer. And with that, I will recognize the gentleman from New York, my good friend, Steve Israel.
Thank you very much. Look, I don't mind House Republicans being out of touch. I mind them being dangerously, recklessly out of touch. And on this issue, they couldn't be more out of touch with the American people. Refusing to enact no-fly, no-buy is the political corollary to, it's a form of political criminal negligence. It is also a form of stunning political malpractice. 80% of Americans support no-fly, no-buy. 77% of Republicans support no-fly, no-buy. 85% of independents support no-fly, no-buy. The New England Journal of Medicine did a study. 82% of gun owners support no-fly, no-buy. And 75% of NRA members support no-fly, no-buy. And this Speaker of the House and this Republican majority dangerously turn their backs on the majority of Americans and common sense. Well, I've got to tell you something. Every time Speaker Ryan tries to gavel us down, we're going to speak louder. He may be able to use a gavel as a tool against us, but we're going to use common sense and public sentiment as a tool against them. And you can absolutely count on that.